There are children screaming outside. Why? I picked the absolute worst time in the day to record this video. Is it the entire kindergarten now passing by my window? I can't see them, they're too short. Anyways, hello and welcome to something we haven't done in a long time. Not talk about Hoyas, we do that all the time, but spotlight a Hoya that is in bloom. That hasn't been due to the lack of Hoyas blooming, it's been due to me not really looking up information about Hoyas. And we will start once again covering Hoyas in bloom by covering a Hoya that I didn't really think I could bloom, but here we are. It is Hoya lyi. It is such a cute flower, and I will definitely show you some close-ups of the flower. Trying to grab this vine. Today I have two clones of Hoya lyi. This one, the very rough-leaved one, and then I have this other one that has very nice elongated leaves. They're actually both kind of elongated, but these are a bit bigger. We will talk about different clones of Hoya lyi, but I also brought Hoya thomsoni with me because it was a short trip from that board in the back. This is I think this is actually Affinity thomsoni with the pink flower. Very hairy. And then we have another Hoya thomsoni, which has kind of grown very strange because honestly it was growing as a hanging plant. Let me just put one of them down, and that's fine, it grew okayish as a hanging plant, but then I put it on the top of my rotstock cabinet. I didn't really like it hanging on that wall shelf in the back, and it kind of got looking very strange. It's gorgeous still, I still love it, but you know, it doesn't really work like hanging plant anymore, does it? It doesn't look that great. Oh, there is another vine here. Anyways, we will get to Hoya thomsoni and why Hoya thomsoni is here with us today a bit later. Hoya lyi is native to China, but recently, and when I say recently, it can be anywhere between, you know, last year and past 50 years. That's all very recent, isn't it? Recently, it has been discovered also in Vietnam and in Laos. So it seems that the region where Hoya lyi grows is far wider than what it was originally thought. 3 specimens were collected of Hoya lyi. The first one was collected in 1897, and I believe it was in September, and the second one was collected just a month later. The first clone was collected in Gan Pin, and the second clone was collected in Lo Pie. I'm possibly 100% getting the pronunciation of these places wrong. The third clone of Hoya lyi was collected in 1904 in November in Tien Sien Kiao. Let's hope that pronunciation is somewhere near correct. And it was collected by a person called Jean or Jean Lyi. I don't really know if it was Jean or if it was Jean. I did try to look into it, but I really could not find any information on this person. In a publication from 2012, where Michele Rodda discusses the taxonomy of Hoya lyi, Hoya yuennanensis, and Hoya mekongensis, it is said that all of these 3 localities where Hoya lyi was collected are not really known to us, or they're really unknown in modern day China. So they did try to find where these localities could be, and they couldn't match them to any modern places. I didn't try. I saw this information that they weren't able to do it, so who am I to even give it a go, you know? Out of the 3 clones of Hoya lyi that were collected, it is the last one that is collected by Jean or Jean, or maybe none of these is the correct pronunciation. Anyways, it was the last clone that was selected as the lactotype because it was matching publication the best, and from my understanding there were some citing inconsistencies when it comes to previous 2 clones, so this one did not have any of that. No inconsistencies, no mistakes, and it matches the publication perfectly. Hoya lyi was described by a French botanist, Augustin, Abel, Hector, Léveillé. That's not my name! Augustin, Abel, Hector, Léveillé. You know, I should have just let Betsy do this video, because my French isn't French. anything but. Aside from being a botanist, Léveillé was also a clergyman. To my understanding and from what I could find, Léveillé never really traveled to China. He did go to India as a missionary, but he did have to return in 1891 to France because of health reasons. Instead, what happened, they would send him plants from Far East, so East Asia and Southeast Asia, to study and describe, and I do believe it was around 2,000 specimens that he received over a course of years. So I do believe that is how he got Hoya lyi. The plant was published in the Bulletin of the Botanical Society of France in Paris. See how I avoided saying the French name of the bulletin there. Wish I could do that with the names. I think for future, if there is a botanist whose name I cannot pronounce, I should just avoid covering that plant completely. And that, my friends, is how you overcome obstacles. You don't pronounce them. Should have been a therapist. The plant was published in 1907, but in 1934 it was actually synonymized with Hoya carnosa. Now this may be strange to us, but if you look at the flower of the plant, it's not a big of a stretch, especially if you're not seeing flower maybe in person. In 1936, that was corrected, so it was just briefly synonymized with Hoya carnosa, and in 1936, it was again Hoya lyi. It was again its own species. At the time when Hoya lyi was published, there were only two other Hoyas from China known to people then. You had Hoya carnosa and you had Hoya Bgssy, which today is Hoya verticillata. And in contrast to that, today we know about 35 Hoya species from China, and this is information from 2012, so potentially there are even more. There are constantly revisions being done. Hoya lyi is said to be similar to Hoya yuennanensis. Now Miro does not have Hoya yuennanensis yet, but it is a Hoya that is on my wish list, and I will be getting it very, very soon. So I will be able to compare what they look like. And honestly, I think I got the confidence to get more Hoyas from China only because I got Hoya lyi to bloom. So is it a blessing or not? I don't know. Hoya lyi is mostly lithophytic Hoya, meaning that it grows on rocks, and it's said that it also likes to grow kind of among the mosses. And in our homes, you know, I grow my Hoya lyi hanging like this, and I have seen people grow it on a trellis. We all know why I avoid trellises. It's because I'm so good at them, and I do not want you to be intimidated by my skills. At one point, Hoya yuennanensis was confused or synonymized with Hoya lyi, but Hoya yuennanensis is supposed to be quite different. It is supposed to be, you know, this one is kind of scandent where it grows, and Hoya yuennanensis is supposed to be more of a vigorous climber. I don't know, but if you do have Hoya yuennanensis, feel free to leave your thoughts on it in the comments below. I will be getting it soon, as I said, and you know, you can expect to see it. Maybe a comparison in one of the videos would be nice. I do have two clones of Hoya lyi, as I previously mentioned. This one I got in May of 2021 from Karolina. Nothing says there on the back. I thought that was a tag. Anyways, I got it from Sweden. Karolina did tell me that this is a special clone of Hoya lyi, but unfortunately she does not have the accession number. But the person who she got it from, and it's a trustworthy person, did tell her that it is a special clone. Now, this other one is Hoya lyi from China. And I always found this descriptor a bit confusing because they're all from China. I mean, yes, you do have clones now in Vietnam and in Laos, but I don't know, that's the original place where it was found. So I do think this probably matches the publication. I don't know because I haven't seen the herbarium specimen in person, but to me from the photos it does look to be matching. Anyways, I have to say this one, in my opinion, is nicer. This clone here is very, very interesting. It's very hairy. The leaves are very rough to touch. I wouldn't describe it as a pleasant experience. Sometimes when you touch leaves that have hairs on them, like this Hoya Thomsoni or Affinity Thomsoni, you know, they're hairy, and it's kind of nice when you touch them. It's not an unpleasant experience. But this is so cardboardy and hairy, I cannot really describe that to be a pleasurable experience. Anyways, this other one is much softer. It is still pubescent, but it is wonderful to touch. It feels like, I guess if you have velvety calatheas, maybe it's similar to that, you know, that kind of velvety feel. It's not rough, hairy, it's very nice. I could touch this all day. I won't, but I could. And both of these do have pubescent stems. The leaves on Hoya lyi vary all across the board. On this one, you have some slightly larger leaves, but they do tend to stay on the small side. And they have dimples similar to Hoya lacunosa, and it's much more prominent than with this other clone. I would say this one has more of a flat leaf. You can see it. You can see some dimples when you turn them towards the light, but it's definitely not as prominent as it is the case with this other clone. And I'm not saying this isn't nice. It is nice. I like it. But when I got this other clone, yeah, this was just nicer to me. This second clone of Hoya lyi I got in 2021 in November from Huba Bgssy, from a Hungarian seller. And I will leave both of their Instagrams from Karolina and Huba if you want to perhaps reach out and get these clones of Hoya lyi. Also, what I wanted to say is getting this one to bloom makes me want to collect all the clones there are because the flowers are absolutely fantastic. I don't know if I will be able to bloom this one within 1 year, but I do hope to do so. When we compare Hoya lyi to Hoya thomsoni, you can see that Hoya thomsoni does have wider leaves. Even with Hoya thomsoni, there is some difference, like this one. These two are also quite different from one another. Now, what I read is that Hoya thomsoni has also a very wide range where it grows, and it is possible that Hoya lyi is one of the variations of Hoya thomsoni. Now, I don't know if anyone looked into this since 2012, but when you look at the photos of the flower, there are some similarities between thomsoni and Hoya lyi. Unfortunately, my Hoya thomsoni did not bloom for me yet, so we are still waiting on that. But I think it would be nice to see both of these in bloom at the same time. Actually, you know what? I'm going to be absolutely opposite of modest. And I'm going to say I want to see all 4 of these bloom at the same time so I can compare the flowers. I think that would be a great video. So, you know, they have been notified. Let's all keep our fingers crossed. Going back to this clone of Hoya lyi, you can see that this one also has small leaves. So they're all across the board small leaved Hoyas. But I did see the original cutting of this plant because I actually got it through a friend from Hungary, and the cutting that she purchased had leaves that were, I think, 10 centimeters or maybe even larger than that. They were really, really big. They were gorgeous, and I had to have this clone. There is even some splash on one of the leaves now. None of the leaves have reached that size yet in my conditions, and it could be a light thing. Maybe they need slightly lower light to become bigger, because sometimes what happens with Hoyas is if you expose them to more light, the leaves will be smaller, and if you expose them to less light, then the leaves will become bigger. So I do think that could be the case here. In its natural habitat, Hoya lyi, as I said, grows on rocks, and they say that it grows in deep shade on the northern side. So this isn't a high light Hoya. And both of these I have kept under my Mars Hydro light, but I would always put them off to the side. Now, they weren't always growing under that light. In fact, this one has been growing under regular LED lights, and it didn't want to bloom. It grew well always, as you can see, but it didn't want to bloom. And I put it in my window because I was told that it doesn't like the LED lights, and that's why it's not blooming. Unfortunately, it also did not bloom in my window, and I actually thought because it is cooler in my window, maybe that will trigger it. It didn't. And it wasn't until I put it in the back there on the wall that it finally bloomed, and this is actually the second peduncle that opened. The photos that I will show you are from the first peduncle, but unfortunately the flowers are gone from that one, so we only have flowers on the second one. And they opened much sooner. There was just a brief time frame where both of these were in bloom at the same time, but anyways, the first peduncle, the flowers were already going out. When it comes to flower, it is beautiful. It is this baby pink / cream color. It is pubescent and it has a purplish center. It does smell nice. Now I don't really smell it. You smell it most in the morning and in the evening, especially when it opens. In the first couple of days you will smell it the most. That's when the scent will be the strongest. I don't really know how to describe the scent. I've heard people compare it to the detergent. I myself compared it to those things for the toilet. You know, the breath thingies that you put in your toilet. But in reality, it is a sweet scent. And it is very strong if you are very close to it. If you are somewhere in the same room, it's not going to be overpowering, but when you get close to the plant, it does get very strong. It's very floral and it is almost artificial in a way. I don't know if that makes sense. But it smells unlike any other Hoya that has bloomed here so far, and I wouldn't say the strongest, but yeah, it's definitely a different experience, I would say, from any of the other Hoyas. But nevertheless, you're not going to be bothered by the scent, I think, unless you have a huge plant that has, I don't know how many flowers you would need to have on a plant for you to be bothered by it. But since you are most likely going to start from a small cutting, I don't think that's going to become an issue anytime soon. When it comes to growing this Hoya, I would say this is a very easy Hoya to grow. It doesn't grow super fast, but it is not slow, and it has a new vine here. This started as a one cutting, and I don't really remember how big the cutting was. I think it was possibly 4 or 5 nodes. So in a year we got here, and I didn't really even take care of it. I didn't pay special attention to this Hoya. I didn't baby it, so maybe it could have grown a bit better if I was a bit better with watering, or maybe providing higher humidity. It was in my room, and my room does have good amounts of humidity. Not so much from summer to fall. I think from summer to fall it stays around 50, but from fall to spring it will definitely be in the 60s and 70s. So that was the humidity. And when it comes to potting mix, it was first in leca, in semi-hydro, but I decided to recently switch most of my Hoyas from semi-hydro because I don't really find it convenient for bigger specimens. They grow well, but it's just a thing, you know, what is most convenient for me, and I think maybe in the future I can talk about it in a video, but don't worry, you can definitely grow it in semi-hydro, and I did grow it in semi-hydro. And I now moved it to a mix with cocoa peat and quite a lot of perlite and pumice. As you can see, someone has been very generous. We did not hold back on the rocks. But the other clone of Hoya lyi from China is growing in pond, and it's a DIY pond, and you can obviously see that by the size of those pumice particles, rocks. And it's, again, doing really well. It actually has a good root system that is starting to go out on the bottom. I don't know if this is a more natural way for it to grow because it's actually now growing on rocks. I don't see it being bothered by it. I think it enjoys it quite a lot. It is growing super fast, this one. This was a very small cutting, so I think it was maybe a couple of leaves only in November, and you can see that it's pushing out another vine there, and I actually saw it pushing out another one, but it's a tiny nub. So we're not gonna look for that for too long. I do think the reason why Hoya lyi finally bloomed for me is because I put it under something that's maybe closer to more natural light, and I do think there is slightly less light on that wall. So maybe because you know, it went from a higher light situation to that, maybe that's why I decided to bloom. So I do believe it could be possible that it is the change of the day length or something that the plant would identify as change of the day length. The light in the back stays on for 14 hours during the day, so it didn't really change the length of how long the light stays on. I know that people say that you can trick Hoya lyi to bloom by shortening the day length to 12 hours or even 10 hours, but also some people claim that it is the temperature. So I don't really know. Both of those kinda have not been the case for me. The temperature didn't change, and when it comes to light, the light changed, but I think it actually got better light, because in my northwest facing window there wasn't much light, especially at that time, which is around March when I moved it. The day would be actually very short. It would be dark until 8 a.m. and again, the day would last only until 4 or 5. And I moved it there above the Rodda cabinet. It's getting longer light, so I don't know. I cannot really tell you what bloomed it for me. I think it's easy to come to a conclusion that's not necessarily right. For example, if you put it outside, towards the end of the season and it starts to bloom, well, did it bloom because of the change in temperature, or did it bloom because of the shorter day length? So it's not always easy to tell, but in any case, I would say just, I would try to give it light, natural light. I would try to give it light. Oh, of course, Miro. What else? I would try to give it natural light, or something that is closer to natural light, because it does seem to be true that LED lights may not be the best. The regular shop LED lights, it doesn't seem that they do the trick. I cannot confirm this, nor deny it. I don't think it needs tremendous amounts of lights. I think it needs something that is close to natural light. So I would put it again in the window. I think it maybe would have bloomed in the window if I left it there for longer. And I don't know, maybe I can try with more clones of Hoya lyi. I can try to put them in the window without any grow lights and see what will happen. When it comes to watering, especially this clone, the one with very small cardboardy leaves, it never really seems to be thirsty, if that makes sense. I have never seen these leaves go soft, even when I didn't water it for a long time. The thing with this Hoya lyi is, these indentations on the leaves, these, I don't really know how to call them, dimples, it kind of looks like it is always underwatered, if that makes sense. Not really. When you look at it, you realize that's how the plant looks like, but it's really not a plant that you can easily underwater. And that is coming from me, the massive underwaterer. You can go easily, I would say, 10, 12, probably even 2 weeks without watering this plant. And I'm pretty sure I have gone 2 weeks or even more without watering this plant. And even this one is now absolutely dry. The pond is dry. There is no water at the bottom. And I can see that those rocks at the bottom are dry. So that means I should water. I shouldn't brag about it. And when I touch the leaves, I can still feel that they're hard, they're normal. They are softer than this one that is in bloom, but they are softer by nature, is what I'm trying to say. This is, I would say, the regular feel of this Hoya lyi, and even though it's completely, absolutely dry, it does not seem to be thirsty. I will give it water, don't worry. I'm not going to be a monster as soon as we're done recording, which is what I always say, and that I'm done recording and I, put them in their spots and that I don't water them. But that's just a little secret from me. I fertilize both of these plants each time I water. I use rain mix, which is the orchid fertilizer. There is no fertilizer in my pond. There is no osmocote or anything like that. It's just zeolite, pumice, and lava rock. And in this mix, it's only cocoa peat and perlite and pumice, so there are really no nutrients here. And in nature, even though they grow on rocks, I assume there will be decaying matter being washed away by the rain. So, I do think if you're growing it in a mix that's similar to mine, that you will need to fertilize it. It doesn't seem to mind anyways. I don't see any signs of them being over-fertilized. Hoya lyi is extremely easy to propagate. Both of these, and sure this goes for all the clones because it's also true for Hoya thomsoni. They have small aerial roots, which I assume serve them to grab onto rocks, and really as soon as you cut it, you can put it in a mix. I actually propagated this one quite recently, and I just took a cutting, I put it in a mix of cocoa peat and perlite, half and half mix. I put it in propagation box and it rooted within 2 weeks. I would say that would be all about Hoya lyi. If you have some questions about this plant, do let me know. If you have it, let me know how you grow it. I heard that some people do struggle with Hoya lyi, so let me know. If you like the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed to the channel, you can do so now, or you can do it at the beginning of every video. You can do it later in the day when you have had some snacks. Really, there's no wrong time to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you very soon in the next video. And guess, round of applause for me for getting back on track with Hoyas in Bloom videos. Did I tell you that you must get Hoya lyi? If I didn't tell you you must get Hoya lyi, you must get it. Don't even think about it. It's a lovely Hoya. And it is really satisfying when you get it to bloom. I actually did cry a bit. Oversharing, which is an indication that a video should end. Some water and some coffee so we can thank our patrons. I would like to take some time to thank my patrons. A massive shout out to my $5 patrons. My 2 anonymous patrons, Alex von Siebenhall, Anne Margaret Moen, Arelise, Betsy Begonia, Bonnie Harris, Carrie, Cynthia Taylor, Danube Daniels, Estelle Farah, Houseplant Heather, Hoya Heather, Jacques Plant Journey, Jessica Chio, Kelso, Kristen Sherwood, Mars B, Martina Leaf Per Day, Melissa Walker, Nicole Ferranti, Nicole and Caleb of Schleif Tropicals, PJ, Plants by Misha, Rachel Colette Conway, Robin L. Jennings, Sherry Kumar, Stephanie H2O, Spinach Geek, Tanya, TJWO, Vicky Dingler, Wojtek Takac, Wendy Foreman, and Zlokov Niponi. Also, a big thank you to my $3 patrons. AMP, Angelina Farnan, Brianna Phillips, Catherine G, Cologne, Claudia L, David Condia, Jerry's Garden, Lisa Helling, Lori Murphy, Morgan Kennedy, Morgana Davina, Nella Nerdy Kathy, Nikki Plantalania, Ringlov, Ruby, and Shayla Mason Casper. And a thank you to my $1 patrons, Brandon Pacheco, Caroline Carey, Erin Keenan, Lauren M, Marissa, Paula Plans, and Tang Watanasria Cool. Thank you all so much for your incredible support. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I hope that it convinced everyone out there to get themselves a Hoya lyi, because it made me cry, so you must absolutely get it. Have a wonderful day, and see you soon.